Hello, everybody. Welcome to our third episode of Launch It podcast. Today we have a special event. We have our first guest speaker. We have Paula joining us, and we also have
Karen Deep.
Karen Deep. All right, today's special segment, we're going to have some fun. We're going to be talking about everything everybody loves talking about, sales. How do we get sales? How do we get into sales? Making that money, that's right. And how do we go about it? Which way we go into it? How do we do it? To set up in the brokerage? How do we set up in an asset? And actually, before we started, we were just having a little conversation. I think it's a great segue how to get into it. KP down there, or to the side of me, asked the question, how do we set up our salespeople? Do we have it in a model where we have dedicated salespeople, they go out and they sell our product, or do we have ops people who do the sales where there's different brokerages where in our previous life, me and Paula worked together where they were the salespeople? Which model is the best model? And from that point, Paula, what do you think? Which model do you think works? Because right now in your current model, you have, is it dedicated salespeople or is it the ops people or the salespeople?
It's a dedicated salespeople,
Mm-hmm.
but nowadays it's a little bit of, if you want good sales, you have to have a mix of being involved in the operations too. So I personally believe being flexible and having the hybrid is probably the way to go.
So in a hybrid model, because I know I talked to you quite a bit. We talked on different, work-wise, not work-wise, but you're very much involved in the sales and also on the day-to-day operation. And you find that the most successful, but is it the most practical way, do you think? Or do you find, like, because the bigger companies do have dedicated salespeople for the most part, right?
Agreed. So my role now is a little bit different. So that's why I'm a little bit more involved in the day-to-day operations and management. But so I would definitely go with a dedicated sales team, but I wouldn't definitely shy away from the hybrid of having operations.
Mm-hmm.
They could just be the added on additional sales,
right.
But not putting that pressure there because their primary focus should always be operations.
Yeah.
Do you think that if, I've been on, when I was in operations, I used to go on sales calls with the sales guy. Is that the same effect, or is it someone who's truly hybrid brings more of that extra oomph to it that brings it over the edge, you think?
I just feel that someone who's a little bit more hybrid is more able to speak to the challenges when they're dealing with the customers. Whereas someone who's just on the road, and this is just from experience, sometimes they can be a little bit more too aggressive, and the impression that they get is just they want to just go after the next sale, and so it doesn't become as personal.
Mm-hmm. KP, what do you think? What has been successful for you so far as a young guy into the industry? Like, what have you tried? What ideas do you guys are working in your current environment, and what you guys are seeing that's working? I know in your current environment, the operations guys take a big role in that sales, and there's not too much of that dedicated. But that question is there, like, which way do we expand from this point?
I guess speaking on, I know you mentioned your past life. I guess in my past life at the last place I was at, it was a hybrid approach that we had took. And, it's, going out and getting your own customers and obviously, dispatching your own loads. So I say, like, coming from a perspective of, like, you're brand new to the industry, you're coming out of college, I definitely think, like Paula said, like, kind of being, like, grounds on and getting that experience of, the operation side definitely helps when you're selling. Because, when you're on like, you make a cold call and, sometimes the customer will be like, hey, all right, cool, I'll give you a shot. What's your rate from Los Angeles to, Calgary? And then you kind of have to, if you're fresh, only sales type of thing, you don't have much experience, you'll be like, okay, 1 second, let me get back to you. I'll follow up with an email, right? Whereas if, you do have a handle on the operation side and, you've covered this lane similarly before, you can kind of give a rough idea on the spot type of thing where, that might carry on the conversation into something else, right? Whereas, you're kind of blocking yourself by saying, okay, let me get back to you, right? In terms of what we're doing right now, we've kind of, I guess, tried different, methods here and there, right? So we're still trying to find what's working for us. But the thing is, so many different things are being thrown at us at the same time. It's hard to kind of hone in and, try one, model for a long enough time to see if it's actually, worth it or not worth it, but, good for what we're trying to do type of thing, right? So
right.
I guess it's a trial and everything, and depending on, I guess, where you're at in your career and the stage the company is at, right?
Yeah. That makes sense. One thing I remember, one conversation I had in one of my past lives was one of the analytics guys was telling me that sales guys are the thing of the past, where analytics will take over for sales, because when the customer asks a sales guy, to your point, hey, what's this rate? And a sales guy will freeze and doesn't know, but an analytics computer or whatever will spit out that rate, where that instant model, that Uber Freight would take over.
Yeah.
Paula, do you think that's something that the sales will eventually go away, or do you think you're going to need someone who has builds? Because I'm a big relationship builder believer. My mentor, Norm, used to always talk about that. He was always like, the best
I
way to
remember Norm, yes.
you got yeah, you got to get in there. You got to get to know that person. The best way to become friends with them, and that's how you'll build that customer base, is becoming friends with them. A computer can't do that. So to me, that doesn't make sense. But at the same time, you see these companies like Load Smart, like Uber Freight. All these guys are taking a big chunk of the market because they can provide that instant quote model for the customer, and there's no relationship there. Do you think that's going to be the way of the future, or do you think there's always going to be a need for a salesperson?
No, I think there's always going to be a need for the salespeople. So what you're speaking of is more the day-to-day transaction, and I'm still a firm believer of building those relationships, the networking and the one-on-one. The analytics can only will take you so far.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like there's got to be a hybrid in the sales aspects, and that included. So it really all depends on what kind of companies you want to partner up with and have those long-term relationships. Do you want to deal with the day-to-day transactional companies that are just come and go, fly by night? Or do you want to have those long-lasting relationships? I have long-lasting relationships over 10 plus years. And I don't know that the analytics type of customers will give you that longevity.
But you see a lot of the big Fortune 500 companies pushing that, like because you have a relationship with a big Fortune 500 company, you're buddy with them, and all of a sudden, like everybody, he makes a career change, and all that hard work they put in there for 8 years, 10 years, 3 years, 6 months, whatever it is gone, and you have to start all over. And that's why they say these analytic pieces are the better way of doing it, because it speaks to what truly is versus the handshake. You don't see any. I can see it moving that way, but I hate it. But at the same time, I can understand why customers would want to go that way.
There are going that way, and I've seen some of those customers actually dropping because they're going that way. But I feel at the end of the day, you still need that personal touch to maintain those long relationships. Like, because the challenges are going to come where everyone's going to underbid, and then all these smaller type companies are going to start closing, and then who are they going to reach out to? They're going to reach out to the people they know.
It's funny you mentioned Uber Freight, because one of our customers as well, we noticed that there was a significant drop in volume. So we kind of set up a call to see kind of what was going on. And there was a lot of internal changes as well happening in terms of personnel. So we had thought it was like kind of had to do with that. So after touching base with him, but they actually ended up going with Uber Freight as one of their providers. And the only way we came to know about that was, I guess there was like numerous loads that Uber Freight dropped that they couldn't cover, whatever. And then they asked us if we can help out. And I guess on the confirmations, they forgot to change, the carrier who they were sending out to, and it said Uber Freight. So then on the call, we kind of asked him like, what's going on. He's like, him personally, that was a change that was made before he started, because he recently just started at that company. But he doesn't like it at all. He's like, I hate like kind of what Paula said, the transactional side of it. He said, they drop loads like it's nothing in terms of, providing that service. Is not really, they're cool. They're giving us a super competitive rate, but in the long run, is that really worth it when, our loads are not being delivered to Loblaws and we're getting hit by $1,000 fines, right? You got to look at it from like the bigger perspective, right? Like those guys are doing a good job at getting market share. Like, obviously, there's something to take away from that and learn from that, I think, in terms of what their practices are, what they're doing. So I don't think we should solely be upset at the fact that they're, taking away from us, because at the end of the day, they're still innovating things, and you should always be, growing and changing. But, I guess there's like a right way of doing things and the wrong way in the big picture, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's definitely a learning. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. We can learn from it, especially on the tech side of that.
Yeah.
And I think the more successful you'll be is based on how flexible and you become at adapting to the changes, especially tech changes. Yeah.
So what do Paul, what do you think was some big changes that happened? Like, you know, it's funny. The more articles I read nowadays is automation because of COVID. You know, COVID changed the way we operate in logistics, the way we operate in our day-to-day lives. Whether it's true or not, it's up for a matter of opinion to a lot of people. There's a lot of people in the States are saying this is all crazy. People are crazy. Canadians a little bit more believe in it, but it's all over the place, right? Like, but sales has changed since COVID. How do you see that relationship changing? Because it feels like it's pushing towards transactions because you can't have that relationship,
I
right?
don't know. I since COVID and since working from home, I've been nonstop on the phone with my customers. I think it's taken me away from my computer. I think making those, and even though we're not having those face-to-face meetings, I'm interacting with them more now on my phone and having discussions more now than I ever did. I think COVID has actually brought us together, and we're
Really, that's
actually
interesting.
talking. Yeah,
So you've
my
seen
phone is
you've seen
nonstop.
pardon?
My phone goes nonstop now.
So for you, it's been a positive reaction to COVID because it sounds like the customers want a extra touch from you, knowing that they're in good hands, and therefore they're reaching out to you more often than they would in the past, where they would call you into a quarterly meeting and go through everything. Now it's more like a monthly touch, going, "Hey, Paul, is everything okay? Everything all right? Like, are we doing all right? Can you take on more freight? Can you?"
Yeah,
Those
there's a
are
lot
happening.
more, and again, and it's not face to face, but it kind of is. There's a lot more Zooms. There's a lot more frequency. I would say my calendar is probably more booked now because of it, for sure. I think
Interesting.
because everyone's all home, they want that more one-on-one that they were lacking before and that they were missing maybe.
Yeah. I guess they're missing even from seeing other people in the office, right? So plus they're at home,
That too. Yeah.
Trust becomes a big thing. I know in the operations, as you know, certain companies are having trouble with trust, and same as companies, like, you're trusting your fate without being able to see that person. Now you're going, I don't know, I've never met this person, I've never done this person, can I trust them? So it becomes a harder of a sell. On that point, how do you finding new customers now? I talked to one of my other sales buddy who works for a bigger asset base, and he says, right now I'm not even focused on net new. He goes, there's no point of calling up anybody because everybody I call, they're like, it's COVID, don't bother me, I need to maintain the ship. And he goes, all I'm doing is what I call farming. He's in there, he's calling his regular customers, how can I get more of the regular stuff so I can at least create net new for myself?
yeah.
But I'm not getting new customers. Do you find it's hard to get net new customers for yourself, or is it people are more open to having conversations?
I think I'm going to have to disagree, and I'm going to have to say to the second. I'm actually finding more success with getting new interactions. Again, I don't know if it's the lack of the one-on-one. People are more willing to talk. I don't know what it is, but I'm definitely getting more successful at reaching out and just saying, "Hey, we're still here. We're still here to help you, and this is what we can do." And yeah, it may not be right away, but at least just starting those conversations and interactions.
Hmm. KP, how are you finding it as being a new into, well, I would say into not in the industry, but new with that company, breaking into finding new customers where you don't have a brand behind you? Are you finding the same kind of open door policy, or do you think a brand does help a lot to open those kind of ease in conversations?
I think brand does have a bit to do with it, but I guess success or failure over the last 3 4 months since COVID started has been a hit or miss type of thing. It's been, I've been reaching out, doing cold calling, and a lot of people say, hey, you're my 20th 30th call, just call me in 6 7 months. I'm like, I can't do this right now. And another one, usually you have rebuttals for objections. One that I really haven't been able to come over is like I says, hey, I appreciate the call, but these 3 4 carriers I've been servicing my freight for the last X amount of years, and during this time I want to help them and make sure I'm loyal to them and take care of them and their family, right? Which I understand from their perspective, because I have a couple of customers of my own who are doing the same for me. So
Mm-hmm.
at that point I say fair enough. We'll touch base 6 7 months from now, right? But overall, I'd say it comes down to just having make sure your pipeline's big enough and your outreach is still there, right? I know for that, like the first little bit, I had the mindset of like it's COVID, no one's going to want to ship or volume's going down. I shouldn't be really reaching out. And after a couple of days, I'm like, okay, that way, like I'm definitely going to dry up. At least have to be doing some outreach, right? So from there, I started reaching out to more people, and some people, like quite a handful of people, have onboarded. So I guess the people I really wanted have really onboarded. So that's I'm a little bit negative about it, but there's still customers onboarding, right?
Absolutely. One question I didn't want to have for you, Paul, is what tactic do you bring to bring on new customers? Like, what's one thing that you have? What's your sprinkle that how do you get a new customer? Like, what advice would be if I brought in a kid from fresh from high school, he goes, I want to do sales for logistics. What's one sprinkle of advice you would give that person coming into logistics besides don't do it, run away? Kidding, but for the most part, like what's your
Okay, here's my key advice that I try to tell everyone because I could personally relate, and I think what's been key to my success is just to be genuine and don't be afraid to be vulnerable either. I
what
would
do you mean?
say
What do you mean by that? By being vulnerable? Sorry to interrupt you.
to talking to people and actually just being open and say, hey, I'm new at this. I'm looking for,
Mm,
your support, your advice, or, can you help me out here? Be vulnerable like that. Be
absolutely.
genuine. Don't be, and what I always say, don't be that typical car salesman.
Yeah.
Always looking for that next sale, that aggressiveness, because I don't think that'll get you far at the end.
So do you prepare yourself for a call? Like, do you have a process? Because I, um, I I like to think on the fly. As much as probably my questions seem structured, I come up with everything as I go. I think of everything very quickly. I've always been known for doing that. Do you find preparing yourself for a call will take away a lot? And obviously the answer is yes, but will it take away that anxiety? And do you do that yourself? Do you go, hey, I'm going to be reaching out to this Fortune 500 company. I know these things about this Fortune 500 company. I know this about this person, or is it very much like I'm going to see what they say and feed off of that?
Yeah, so when I first started, for sure, always be prepared. Um, as I've learned over the years, I'm somewhat prepared, and I go with a little bit of flow and see what their needs are. And here's the thing: understand what your weaknesses are, and
Hmm.
it's okay to be not able to service those needs, and it's okay to say, "I'm sorry, I can't help you with that."
That's key. I think that's
Because
that's key.
yeah, because I think that'll show. Okay, they know what their weaknesses are. So they know. Don't be everything to everybody.
Hmm.
That'll take you further. I actually think that'll give you more credibility.
I agree. KP, what do you do? Do you kind of do you wing it? Do you just go in there and kind of guess, or are you one of those guys methodical? You plan it out. This is how I found success for it.
I guess I'll say my sprinkle, as you said, a little bit later, but
Yes,
I guess
please.
touching on the vulnerability aspect that Paul had mentioned earlier, there's actually one of our guys here. He's telling a story one time where, he started off early on in his career, so I think it was his first gig in logistics, and he had been working on a big account, Fortune 500 company, more so like the operation side. Is, he got to really learn a lot about, the account, logistics, transportation, and stuff, right? And, when he joined another place, he kind of used that, and he wanted that customer. He had built a good relationship with them, so kind of the approach he took with them was he kind of was honest with them. He called them saying like, hey, you probably don't remember me too well, but I was kind of in the background doing the day-to-day stuff for you guys, and but I just want to thank you for I really learned a lot from you guys' account, and it really made me the person who I am, type of thing. And kind of he started off the conversation by that, so that kind of makes them feel good at the same time that, like, hey, this is a guy who we didn't really know about, but like we've made such a huge impact in his life that he's thanking us. How can we help him now? And they actually end up securing that account again in some of the lanes at his next place he went to, right? So I agree with you what you're saying in terms of vulnerability. It's a really good I guess tip to have. But I guess going back to how I do it, lately I've been just doing the shotgun approach, just getting my list. Hey, how can I help you? Structuring my script, I guess, a bit. What are your inbound lanes, what are your outbound lanes, and I try doing. I don't know. I'm always trying different things. I try building out my list, doing a little bit of research. Who is a person? Trying to figure out here like little things about them. If I say, oh yeah, you went to this university. I'm from the same university. How was your experience there? How experience there, right?
Hmm.
But lately it's just been the shotgun approach.
Don't
So
get me wrong. I do think like being planned, like preparing and planning, it is the key to success. Like I would always, even before the next day, I plan what, like, I am a very structured person
Yeah,
in everything that I do. And I plan and prepare the night before what I wanted to achieve
yeah,
the following day.
yeah,
So that is still part of the success in sales. You need to do that. And you want to hit those targets, those daily targets. I'm going to hit so many companies or make so many calls.
Yeah.
And then that way it feels good to scratch those off and say, hey, I did that and I did above and beyond that.
Yeah.
So that is still key to being successful in sales or in anything, really. Planning and preparing for sure, structure.
I think that little piece that you just talked about there, Paul, is very important for anybody new too, is having that feeling of success in sales wherever there's a lot of no's. Like you're not going to get a lot of yes, it's going to be a lot of no's. So having that feeling of, okay, I made this call, I succeeded, I got a little bit further is very important to be able to build on that, because you can get very discouraged very quickly early on if you don't have that self motivation and being able to build yourself up, because there's going to be a lot of customers that can tell you, like KP said, get lost. Like, I don't want to talk to you right now. I'm focusing on this. Talk to me later, but doubtful I'll give you anything. And you just got to make those phone calls, 100 phone calls, and not make it uh, not a meaningful conversation every time. You have to make sure it's meaningful every time. Like they're gonna give you freight, because if they feel that you're cold and there's no enthusiasm there, you've lost them, right? And that's what I find to do. You got to have that passion for whatever you're touching or whatever you're doing. We were supposed to go back to you, KP. You're supposed to tell me about your sprinkle that you had. You never, or did you touch upon that?
I guess a tip that I did early on when I first started, and I still do it now to get new customers, is I go on like Indeed and job posting sites, and I search
Mm-hmm.
up, logistics coordinators, shipping managers, shippers, receivers, warehouse managers, right? So at that point, this place is shipping out stuff, and then, you find what's it called, the shipping companies from there, and those people recently have onboarded with that company, so they're looking to usually make a change or whatever. If
Mm-hmm.
not immediately, I usually call them up and say, hey, how's it going? And they'll tell me they recently started, and they're still trying to learn things, but you're definitely in a month or so they're willing to give me a shot, right? So I've had, like, I'd say, like, extreme success in that approach of finding shippers and customers that way. But yeah, that'd be my tip or advice to try that out.
I've heard that before. My current boss told me that, and that surprised me. He told me, like, to me, it clicked right away. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense.
So,
Like, that's a very nice, cool way of finding, you're helping someone new into their position, and
yeah.
being that provider for them and getting a new customer. It just made sense when he said it. Was like glass broken in my head. We're down to the last couple minutes here, Paul. I do have one last question, kind of end on this, because I wanted to hear your thoughts. Um, One thing that our industry struggles, and you can probably speak to it better than anybody here, is women in logistics. There's not enough of them. It's not equally down the middle. They're not enough in sales. There's not enough in any aspect of it. It's very, there's, women, there's a big push for women in trucking. There's a big push in all that kind of aspect of it. It's not, no secret, it's male dominated industry.
Mhm.
How do you see in the 10 years, 20 years that, I don't even know how long you've been in this industry, so I'm going to say 5 years, because very, very young looking.
I agree.
How do you see has it changed in that time? Like, do you find it easier now as it's progressed, or was it easier back then? What's your take on that?
Okay, so when I first started, it's interesting. I started young in this industry, 15 plus years. That's all I'm going to say. so,
Not possible. Not possible.
so the challenge for me at the time was, yes, male dominated and still is. B, I think I didn't get credibility because I was A, female, and B, I looked young. So those were the challenges that I had to deal with back then when I first started.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I feel like I don't know if the female thing doesn't seem to be much of a challenge as it used to be. Again, for me, I think it's I'm older now, and I think a lot of the people that I sit with across the table are actually younger than me, so
Mm-hmm.
I have more credibility.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like it's changed the other way for me, anyways. Um, so with regards to female, I think people are more open because the world has changed in
Mm-hmm.
the last 10 years. We have female drivers, yes, not a lot, but if you go to any big companies, you'll see a lot more women in the industry. Um, even owners of trucking companies
Absolutely, that's a great one too.
are females.
Mm-hmm.
One good carrier that I know out in Peterborough is a female owner.
Yes.
I don't want to mention names, just we can't. But so I don't know that the female thing is becoming as big of a challenge as it was when I first started.
Good. I'm glad we're moving in that direction, because
Yeah.
it's a topic that's been brought up many times. Trucking news, everybody always talks about it. So I wanted to hear your perspective on it. And I think we've reached our time limit. for today. I just want to say thank you so much, Paul, for joining us, for being our first guest. It is a milestone. It was exciting to have you here.
Yeah.
So good.
Flattered. Thank you.
I liked it.
And it was a great topic. We'll probably most likely revisit this topic again, and you'll most likely be invited. I know you'll be invited back, so you'll be joining us with other people. You'll be adding your own 2 cents. I had a great time today. Thanks everybody for joining us, and look out for the next episode. And we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.